All right, hey guys, welcome back to another maybe monthly vlog. This is the vlog for November of 2024. Before we get into everything today, just again, as always, want to thank you guys for all the continued support. It's been a really cool thing to see, kind of from like the 10,000 foot view, because every month, like you see stuff, you see comments and subscribers and all that stuff. But like, I went and looked at my analytics from October of last year to now, and the growth has been insane. So I basically like went up 50% in subscribers. At the end of October, I was at 890, and I'm at like 1230 something right now. So it's been pretty insane from a year's growth because I've had my YouTube channel. You guys might not know this, but I've had my YouTube channel since 2007. So obviously I did other stuff for a very long time, and there was a couple years I didn't upload anything. There's been some phases on my YouTube channel of like what things I've done through the years. But I've had this thing since 2007. So my YouTube channel is nearly 20 years old, which, oh my gosh, that is actually crazy to think about. That's almost 20 years old. Holy cow. Okay, well, we're going to set that aside for now. So yeah, so maybe we'll get into a little bit more of like a overview of like how the year went for me and things like that in at the beginning of January. But yeah, so always thank you guys so much. I do have a small beef with someone, so whoever you are, assuming this is the same person, if not, it's fine. But for whatever reason, all my Marvel Champions videos, or most of my Marvel Champions videos, have one dislike, which is fine. I don't mind a dislike, but if there's something that I'm doing and it's in every single one, and you're the same person disliking it, could you tell me what I'm doing that makes you dislike it? Because it seems weird that I just have this one dislike on a bunch of my videos, my Marvel Champions videos. And if it's something that is like genuinely I can make it better, let me know. Like comment like in any capacity. If there's something I'm doing, I'm completely open to any constructive criticism. And I've said this before, but just I want to reiterate, like feel free to say like, hey, you could do this better, slow down, whatever, please. And I know like I get a lot of times people give me rules corrections, and I always appreciate those because you guys do it in such like there's a way to do it where you can be like mean about it or kind of like an ass about it, but every single time somebody points out a rules thing for me, it's all good. Like it's genuinely like I just missed something cool. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. Like because there's 100 games here. Trying to remember everything, especially new ones, reading rules all the time, you just stuff misses through. So it's totally fine. So if there's something about a video, and again, you can like I don't mind the dislike either. It's not about the dislike itself. To me, because I'm consistently seeing this one dislike on my Marvel Champion stuff, it makes me feel like there's something I'm doing that could be better to this person, and I just be interested in what it is. So if you watch this and you want to know, please tell me because I just want to know if I can make anything better. But with that being said, I want to add. Usually we have a topic and to kind of have a conversation with everybody on, and we'll get to that towards the last part of the video. But I do want to kind of highlight a couple of videos from the month, especially because we're just doing a lot of playthroughs, a lot of videos. It's like 4 or 5 a week, so it's a ton of stuff. And sometimes stuff might get missed, or you might not see it, and I don't know how the algorithm works and things like that. So I just wanted to point out a couple playthroughs for you guys to go check out. I mean, obviously, I want you to watch them all if you enjoy them, but mainly the Unconscious Mind playthrough because it's kind of the hotness at the moment, delivering to a lot of backers, hitting, I think, Essence, previous Essence. I don't know when it's hitting like retail, but we did a solo playthrough of that. Um, Really cool worker placement game. It's got I think the coolest part about the game is the resource wheel, the insight wheel that you do the different major, medium, minor insights for like passion and freedom and growth, or like resources basically. And this wheel increases like strength of each of them, and you can also like move in between or like drop one to raise two or whatever, like do all kinds of different things. And Unconscious Mind is a game that is definitely like a heavy game, but it's not heavy from a perspective of like what you're doing is incredibly easy and straightforward. The heaviness, I think, because it's kind of I've kind of stepped away from really heavy games, but the heaviness comes from there's a lot of like free actions. There's a lot of things to consider, a lot of things combo, so it can be hard to kind of keep track of stuff. But what you're doing, and I think how you're doing it, isn't necessarily hard. But I think I think there's like a big openness to how you can do it. I think that's where it becomes very heavy. I think that's the heavy part there. So um, while it's like, I think I got a 4 or something on BGG out of 5 with complexity or close to a 4, it doesn't feel like a 4. It doesn't feel like a Lacerda. So, but check that out if you haven't already. But that's Unconscious Mind. The other one I wanted to highlight is a pair of videos which just came out this past week, were the Barcelona playthroughs. For a couple reasons. Danny Garcia is one of my favorite designers right now. I think you hear a lot of people praising him. He's crushing it. For me, he's 3 for 3 for everything I've played. That's Arborea, Barcelona, and Windmill Valley. We'll do a playthrough of Arborea at some point because the expansion's coming to Kickstarters at some point. So I want to do a playthrough of Arborea. It's a really cool worker placement game. It's very unique. But we did Windmill Valley already, and we did Barcelona just recently, and we did the expansion of Barcelona. And I actually recorded that Barcelona playthrough, the base game playthrough, back in like August, because the expansion came out during Gen Con, but didn't hit like regular retail till much later, October. So we did do the playthrough of that, and I wanted to show both playthroughs so you can see basically the differences between what the expansion offers and what the base game is. Because some people definitely like the base game and like base games and don't bother with expansions. For me, it's one of those expansions where I feel like it's a minimal amount of addition from like a rules overhead and like trying to like complexity perspective. Like I don't think it adds too much complexity from like a rules type of way, but I think it adds a lot of like strategic differences and like things to focus on that make it just variable in that way. So I think like it's a really nice, and I think you could probably teach it with that expansion. You know, sometimes you can integrate an expansion and it's fine, but I think this is one that you could. I do think so. But, you know, it is what it is. So yeah, check those out. Go ahead and check those out. We may do another playthrough of that once the upgrade components become available at retail. So Board and Dice did upgrade components for Windmill Valley, for Barcelona, for Nucleum. I feel like there was one other thing, but I can't remember. Maybe not. But they did some upgrade components for those games, like coins for Nucleum, tulips for Windmill Valley, and then a bunch of the components for Barcelona. So I will get those, and maybe I just like showing off and having fun with the upgraded components. So we may do some playthroughs, additional playthroughs of those, and we could do a playthrough of Nucleum. I mean, that is a heavy game, but I think it's fun. So we could do a playthrough of Nucleum if you guys are interested. There's a bunch of content for that coming out too, expansion wise. So I do have Nucleum. So yeah, so check out those videos if you haven't if you're interested. Some videos that should be out but aren't are the keyword videos. So we'll kind of talk about those here, and I kind of want to address that elephant in the room a little bit. The keyword videos. So I know a while back I said I'm going to knock these out by October before Weapon X comes out, and then with Weapon X we can just do them as they go through. So a couple things happened. One, and the main one, and honestly this is like 90% of it, is I just wasn't fit. I didn't feel like doing them. And that's not to say that I'm not going to do them, and I do have some on my computer, but ultimately I just wasn't in the mood for it. Sorry about my eyeball. And I'm not going to make something I don't feel like making. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And if I'm not in the right headspace for it, I just don't want to do it just because, right? So that's a big part of that. The other kind of like, then the technological limitation, and I don't even say it's a limitation, it's just like more time consuming, is that when I switch cameras, so what I'm recording on now is my Logitech Brio that I've been recording most of my stuff on, and my new camera is this Insta360 Link 2. And obviously this camera is like way more better, like 4K resolution. It's got the tilts and zooms and all that stuff. So from a like production standpoint, it's a significantly better camera than the Brio. The problem is that the software for the camera doesn't have a pause button. So when I'm doing the stuff for those videos, I could pause it, set up for the next example, and then unpause it and keep going. It was basically it was like a lazy man's edit. Like I don't have to edit because I can just basically pause in the video software itself. So the Link 2 doesn't do that. So then you're like, well, you can just take the stuff. I can either use my Brio and switch it back out. But the Brio camera, like, to me, I don't think it's that great. I mean, relative to what I have, it's just not something that I'm not happy with how it looks, especially because it takes so much. I fought with a lot of lighting issues. It does not work well in low lighting. So I fought with the lighting quite a bit to make it. And there were times where it was really inconsistent. And if like the right time of day could screw it up, the wrong time of day, I mean, it was just more trouble than it was worth. And I'd have to like remount it back up and refix the angle stuff and all of those things. So I could do it off my Insta360 camera. The thing with that camera is that because it records in 4K, and I think that's the way that I want to do things. I don't want to lower. I mean, if I can do 4K, I'm gonna do 4K. The file sizes are humongous, so much so that my PC ran out of space. Now it doesn't have a whole lot; it's a terabyte, but there's like games from Steam I've downloaded. But my PC ran out of space after I recorded like 7 videos because they're so huge. So to give a comparison, I have an hour-long video of Circadian's First Light, second edition, that I have a playthrough of that'll be coming out sometime on my old camera, and it's like 4.9 gig, right? It's less than 5 gigs for an hour-long video. An hour-long video of like Windows Andromeda's Edge playthroughs is over 100 gigs. So it's literally 20 times larger for a file with this camera than it is with the camera you're looking at right now. So when I import that into the editing software, it just takes forever. So the speed in which I'd be able to produce these videos drastically cuts down quite a bit unless I switch cameras back. And frankly, I don't want to switch cameras back. So with all that being said, I will get out the videos that I have at some point soon. It's just a matter of me just throwing them into YouTube and like putting timestamps for the keywords. When Weapon X comes out, which I think now it's rumored to come out November 13th, because it was supposed to come out in October and never did. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm sure it'll come out soon. When that comes out, we will do the unboxing. I will do the keyword video and just take the time to edit it, because I think doing them one at a time as they come out won't be a big deal. The daunting task is going to be doing 20 of them and trying to get them all out. And that's what is like held me back, because it just feels like a large, insurmountable deal. So doing them as they come out, I will do them as they come out and then just eventually start filling back in on the old ones. But we'll do the unboxing, we'll do the keywords, and then we'll do playthroughs. And that's how we'll do that Weapon X stuff. So just wanted to address that. It's just, I'm just not feeling it. And October was a crazy month. We just had a lot going on, and I might get into it another time, but we just had a lot of big life events happen during October that really just kind of put me in a different mindset. So, it was just a lot. Yeah, so with that being said, before we get into today's main topic, let's kind of talk about what to expect for November and what I'm trying to go for. I can't promise that this is going to happen for sure, but some of the things I'm looking to do for November, we talked about Weapon X for Legendary. Magneto, the last of the X-Men cycles, coming out for Champions the 15th, so I think they might be the same week, which would be pretty crazy. But Magneto will come out. We'll do what we did with Nightcrawler. I think what I'll do is do a playthrough with this precon, then we'll look over his cards and kind of go from there. My Legendary, or the Champion stuff we've got going on for the next few weeks is going to be a playthrough of the Rise of Red Skull campaign. It's a pretty easy campaign, and I've been wanting to kind of play the OG characters, so I've got a deck that I found on Marvel CDB, Black Panther, it's Protection, that kind of uses some of the stuff from Nightcrawler's precon, so it's a pretty fun deck. So yeah, so that's kind of what the Marvel Champion stuff will be. We'll have Rise of Red Skull with a Magneto intermission at some point during the month. Legendary, kind of just regular scheduled activity, with the exception of towards the end of the month, we'll be doing a playthrough of Agatha All Along. If you guys have been around for a while, you'll know we do MCU playthroughs of the shows and movies after they come out. And I like to wait about a month after release to give people time to catch up or watch it. Some people like to binge it at the end. Some people, follow it every week. Some people just don't. They watch it whenever they can. So it's more so just to we'll catch up on doing that. Marvel did announce What If Season 3 is in December, and they might be doing it like they did last time they did it, which was release an episode every day, which we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do that. It might be the same thing where I did a Monday, Tuesday, or I did a Friday, Saturday, Sunday of Marvel Legendary for 3 weeks to do all the episodes, so I could get them all done in a month. So we're gonna see, because otherwise we're gonna be stuck for 3 months doing Marvel what if scenarios. So we'll see how that goes. But that's kind of the definitive stuff we're doing. Some of the other stuff that's happening in November, we've got. So I mentioned Danny Garcia and Datoshi. Datoshi's coming. Hopefully, I think within this next week, as well as the expansion for the White Castle. So playthroughs for those will be coming out very soon. Um, I don't know when Minos is coming, but I want to when Minos comes out, we'll be doing one. So that might not be till December. We'll see when it comes out from Board and Dice. But we're going to be doing Daitoshi. We're going to be doing the White Castle Matcha expansion. We have, I said, Circadians for a slight playthrough, as well as Architects of the West Kingdom playthrough. Garfield, you guys know, is my favorite publisher, and Shem Phillips is my favorite designer, so I want to get some more of their games done. So we'll probably do a playthrough of Architects, or after the playthrough of Architects, we'll probably do a playthrough of Paladins of the West Kingdom at some point within the next month. We'll see. The other thing is I should be getting, so you can kind of see back, where is it? How my finger work? Right there is it's Stroganoff. So it's from Game Brewer. Game Brewer went out of business this past year, which really sucks because I think some of their games are really good. And Stroganoff is one of those games that like is a really, really good solo Euro game. I think a lot of people, it's kind of on people's radar. I think it's not rated that great on BGG because like the production's not great, but like mechanically it's really good. Like it's very, very interesting and very different. And the expansion should be delivering any time now, and it comes with like kind of replacements for some of the cardboard pieces. So I don't have I got the base game from retail, so I might get some upgrades to kind of fill out some of the things like do the coins and like do some stuff like that for the horses. But I want to do a playthrough of Stroganoff and then a playthrough of the expansion, so that will maybe be coming this month as well. Depends on when it delivers, but it should be any time now. I want to do two more. We're going to do at least two more Andromeda's Edge playthroughs because it seems you guys seem to like that, and I'm having a really fun time playing that game. Except when my dice rolls are bad, so I've got to figure out. I think it'd be fun to try to see if we can like win without having to go into hardcore fighting. I don't know, but we're going to do some Andromeda's Edge playthroughs to play the other two Unity captains at level 2. So we may have one of those coming out pretty soon. And then I did get this, which I need to learn how to play, but this is one that I've been really looking forward to. Rome, Fate of the Empire. This is the solo board game of the month from back a while back, and it's a Euro game. It's like a deck building Euro. It's a one-player game, and it's I mean it's 60-90 minutes for a single player game. It's pretty crazy. So I need to learn the rules for this and play this. So this is also on the docket, hopefully for this month. So it's already a lot of stuff. We'll see what gets played. We'll see what doesn't get played. And yeah, I mean there's we had a lot of stuff come through, so we'll kind of see how things shake out for the next couple weeks. But that's kind of what to expect on the channel. Maybe doing some Slay the Spire. We'll see if I can point to it some direction over here somewhere. So yeah, we'll kind of see how things go. I'm looking around at my game, see if anything else piques my interest. But yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about. So the main topic for today is going to be, these are going to be the games that informed my tastes in board gaming. And this is sort of a semi-related conversation to last week or last month when I talked about like how you cull your games, because the games that I got at the beginning of my board gaming career, I don't have most of them. And so basically I got Marvel Legendary, which I obviously still own. But I went several years with only playing Legendary from like the end of 2017 to the beginning of 2022 was all Legendary. Alien Legendary got thrown in there, but basically it was all Marvel Legendary and then Alien Legendary, and that's the only thing I ever played. And then I started dabbling into other games. I can't remember what the trigger was. Maybe I was just like, well, if other games can be played by yourself, if this game can be played by yourself, maybe others can. And so I just started kind of diving deep into like what are like the top solo games, and like the things that kept coming up were like Marvel Champions and One Deck Dungeon, and I think like Warp's Edge was in there, Set Watch, things like that were kind of like Sleeping Gods, I think, Arkham Horror, the card game. There was all kinds of stuff like that, right? So I'm looking in and I'm like, well, what can I get into? Because I want something that doesn't have a high barrier for entry from a content perspective. at this point, I've got everything for legendary, but like coming into it now would be very be a lot, right? There's so much stuff. And that was my biggest reluctance to champions, but then I ended up just doing it anyway. So at the time, I'm looking into seeing stuff, and so we'll kind of go through that journey a little bit. And so to start off, the games that really informed my board gaming life, we're gonna take a look here. And the first one obviously is Marvel Legendary. Now, what this did for me is I grew up playing a lot of trading card games, right? So I grew up Pokemon collecting, and then I played a little bit of Pokemon. We had a card shop down the street from my house growing up, so I would go up there and play people. You sit down with some person you don't know and play, and that was like a nice communal thing to do. Then got into MTG for a little bit, not that serious, but did play Magic the Gathering concurrently with Pokemon. Then got into Yu-Gi-Oh, and Yu-Gi-Oh was the thing that I really got into. So I got into Yu-Gi-Oh, like I started collecting the cards probably like fourth grade, fifth grade. And then like through middle school into high school, I played a ton, especially like eighth grade, I played a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh. So I'm like 14 playing, 13, 14 playing a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh. Had a lot of friends that we would go, that lived in my neighborhood. We would play, we would go up to the library and just meet up and play a ton of Yu-Gi-Oh, which I would go to local tournaments, things like that. So Yu-Gi-Oh was my thing. And I like the idea of, I love card games, right? So I've always liked card games. Um, so when I got Legendary introduced to me, I've never even heard of a cooperative game at this point, let alone a Marvel game that was, and I thought it was like its own deal, right? I'm thinking like this is a whole brand new deal to me. And my friend showed it to me, and I've told the story a couple of times, and I was like, this is great. And from when he showed it to me to the next time I saw him, I had bought everything that was available over that few months. But as I looked into it after he showed it to me, because I'm like, I would love to get this game, I figured out it was single player, and I'm like, okay, so this can be done by itself. Like you can play this alone. And so it lets you, because with those trading card games, you have to find a friend to play with and this and that. And as you get older, kind of things change. It's hard to meet up with people. It's hard to like take the time to do that. I mean, when you're a kid, it's much easier because you don't have as many responsibilities. You're not working all day. I mean, you have school, but really you're not working all day. So when I figured out this was a game that can be played on its own, that really made it a big deal to me. And the thing I loved about this is that because now this is obviously isn't like from a mechanical standpoint the same as like a TCG. At the time, it scratched the itch of like I can make a deck of cards. I have a deck of cards. I can upgrade that deck through the game as the game progresses, and basically make a deck myself and use that deck to fight something and to battle something. And so I learned that like I love this mechanic deck building. Like this is such a cool mechanic where you're like, I'm gonna start with some pretty basic things, but by the end of the game, I'm gonna be super powerful and I'm gonna have all these combos and like this triggers this and all this other stuff. The thing you get when you build the deck for a TCG. Um, the funny, and we'll come back to that in a minute, but the funny part about that is like I don't like that idea anymore. Which is why Marvel Champions is such harder for me from like creating my own deck standpoint that I have to go back to Marvel CDB for stuff. But yes, at the time, I'm like, this scratched the itch for me. I can play by myself. It's got all the characters I love because I've been a big Marvel person forever. Um, so this told me not only can games you play by yourself, but they can be they can still fulfill that love that I've had of like trading card games, which is what I grew up on. And it's Marvel, so I'm like, well, I can, not only is it a game, like it pulled me in because it's Marvel, but it's a game you can play yourself. And if I did play with other people, this is cooperative. So you're playing as a team, which is another concept that I didn't realize because most games you play, they're competitive. So like the idea that like, this was a nice thing that if I wanted to share with somebody, it's like we're doing this together, we can collaborate. Like it's a fun communal thing where you're not like destroying somebody or like ruining their stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of the first step of things, and that's really what got me into the idea of, excuse me, playing, playing games, solitaire. Now the next thing would be in the journey of getting solitaire games. The first three games I bought were One Deck Dungeon, Set a Watch, and Sentinels of the Multiverse. And now Set a Watch. Now the thing that Set a Watch did for me was, again, these are all cooperative games. So from the perspective of we're playing games, but like there's still like you're going against something. Like there's an enemy deck. There's a thing. There's a thing to fight against. You're not fighting against anybody else. This is like, and so from a solo and cooperative perspective, there's a lot of overlap because not a lot's changing between those two environments, right? You play with the other people, it's going to be very similar. what Set a Watch did for me, and to some extent, while like the thing that Set a Watch did for me that One Deck Dungeon didn't do, because I think especially originally I thought they were very similar. There's like cards and there's like dice, and you're using the dice to do things, right? And you're rolling all these dice and all this other stuff. And maybe if I were to go back to One Deck Dungeon now, I'd have a different perspective on it all these years later. But the one thing Set a Watch did for me was using dice in a way that didn't make me feel bad. So I love using dice in games, but it has to be the right kind of game. And the thing is that dice can, like, if the dice are deterministic to how well you do, it's an incredibly frustrating thing. I'm a big fan of Euro games, and Euro games just remove randomness. So dice obviously inherently are random. So it's how dice are utilized in those settings that make it or break it for me. And what One Deck Dungeon does is that, yes, I think there's a lot of dice manipulation and mitigation. It just felt, especially as a new modern board gamer, it felt too punishing, and it felt too much of a hurdle to get over when trying to do your game. And I'm sure now, going back to it, maybe I have a different experience, but at the time, it just didn't work for me in the way that I was hoping. Where Set a Watch worked for me very, very well, because your dice do matter, but if you have, but at the very least, they activate abilities just by placing the dice on there. So you can roll poorly, but you can activate your abilities that are really strong. And so you're not necessarily punished for rolling poorly. And like, there are mechanisms to like, well, if I get doubles and I'm at camp, that's helpful for other things. So I can roll 2 2s and be like, it doesn't matter because the two, they're doubles, so I can do something with it or whatever. And again, One Deck Dungeon, it's been a very long time since I played it. But at the time, I just realized I like dice, but I don't like the dice deciding what's good for me. Whereas with Set a Watch, I do feel like you can work with that parameter and you can work in that environment. And plus, again, it's another game's cooperative, and it seems daunting because you are having to control 4 characters no matter what. But this is such a great game for that, in that there's not a lot of overhead on it. It's just like it's just basically one party you're carrying, and it's just, here are the abilities I have. There's not a lot of hands. You're not holding different hands. You're not doing all this other stuff. It's a very easy multi-handed, quote unquote, multi-handed game to consider. So, Set a Watch, big thing for me, made me love dice, and made me love dice in the way that it gives you that puzzle to work with, as opposed to, if I don't roll well, or I don't feel as punished about the dice. But I love dice, and this made me like figure out how I love dice in board games. Because anything that has dice, I'm like super interested in. But it has to matter what they do. I would say the next game, and I just mentioned it, was Sentinels of the Multiverse. And you're going to be like, well, I've never seen this on the channel. Because this game, in the opposite way, made me understand that I cannot stand multi-handing things. I cannot stand multi-handing any sort of solo game. Now, when I say multi-hand, I mean literally multi-handing. In the example of One Deck, or the example of Set a Watch, or even something as more recently as Leviathan Wilds, you have 2 characters, you have multiple characters. If they have just like a couple cards out and you're just managing between the two, that's fine. But like a whole hand of cards that you have to set down, re-pick up, go through, figure out, set down, re-pick up, I hate it. I hate it with a passion. And the thing is that everybody was like, Marvel Champions is great whenever I was looking at solo stuff. But again, I was in this perspective of like, there's a lot of content there. And it just seems like a lot, especially because I had so much Marvel Legendary, that I was like, I can't have 2 giant games. I can, clearly. That Sentinels of Multiverse was almost that perfect. It was the perfect storm of, they're doing a definitive edition. So it's like, you don't have to go back on all this content because they're basically updating everything, and they're going to re-release it all. The decks are all made for you, so I don't have to figure out how to deck build. And each character is this very distinct thing. So I'm like, great, this is awesome. But you have to minimum have 3 characters in play, no matter how the player count is. So if a 1 and 2 player, somebody's controlling at least, for 1 player, you're controlling 3 characters, and then a 2 player, 1 person's controlling 2 characters. So I tried it, and I wanted to like it so much. And a lot of the management of like the points and tokens and stuff like that didn't bother me nearly as much. But I so wanted to like this game, and it just didn't work for me. And it made me realize that anytime a solo game requires multi-handing characters, and again, having a whole hand of cards that you have to consider, and it's so much to do. Having to do that made me realize I do not want that in my solo games. And if a solo game has that, like, so I know that like what's that Gloomhaven or Jaws of the Lion, you have to have two characters. I'm not gonna do it. So it omits it from my perspective entirely. Um, that's why I don't multi-hand any legendary playthroughs. That's why I won't multi-hand any champions playthroughs. I don't like managing two separate hands of cards. I just can't do it. It's too much for my brain. Spirit Island, I'll never do that for that either. This just made me realize that for me and the way I like to play games, I can't multi-hand stuff. So the next game I want to point out to is going to be Imperium Legends and Classics. So this game is the first game that I probably played that was a competitive game that I would play solo. So this is kind of the first thing that says, hey, like I know you've been playing solo games, but this game is actually a competitive game that has been modified with an automa or an AI to play solo. And now, again, deck building, probably my favorite mechanic. If I didn't say that already, my favorite mechanic, basically, in board gaming. This game's a deck building game, and you've got a ton of factions, and they all have unique decks, and you're going through this thing, and there's a really cool like growth and progression throughout the game. And this is one game when it dropped, everybody's like, "This is the awesome! Like this is it's a 1 to 4 player, but it's incredibly amazing solo because of this really cool system with the AIs." And each deck is a different opponent, and you're basically like, you get one box, you have 8 opponents in there. You get 2 boxes, you get 16 opponents, so you can have a endless combination of stuff. And little did I know at the time, Dave Turtsey would be someone I'd look out for. But at the moment, everybody's raving about this game from a solo perspective. It's deck building. There's a lot of content. And this was like, okay, so I have an opponent to actually look at and manage. And, from a solo gaming, I like AIs. I also like kind of objective-based things that I like more. Basically, I just want to win-loss condition. That's my general rule. However that happens, I'm pretty flexible with. I just don't really like beat your own scores typically. I have a few exceptions to that from some of the games I own, but for the most part, I want a win or loss condition. And so this is an idea to say, hey, like, you have an opponent you're going to go against, and you're going to score points at the end of the game and see if you get more than them. And this was such a cool thing for gaming for me because, again, a card game, deck building game, that I'm head to head against somebody, basically, and I can change that behavior or that opponent by switching out these different decks. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, there's so much here to give you from a board gaming standpoint. So it's a little bit redundant, but it helped me take on a higher complexity. And it really did is what it did additionally is introduce me to Dave Turtsey. So David Turtsey, obviously at this point now, you guys know, if you've been around, he is the big solo mode guy. He's one of the big, prominent solo mode developers. And this leads me into the final game that I would say really defines me as a board gamer is going to be Tekkenu. And I've talked about this in the past, but Tekkenu is one of my favorite games ever. It is one of the big Euro games that I had gotten into very early on. And it's funny, it's a 4.06 complexity out of 5. But I know this game like the back of my hand. Well, almost. The back of my hand in the dark, I guess. I know this game very, very well. And Dave Turtsey is not only a co-designer on it, he's a solo designer on it. And this is probably, I think this is like the first time that I was playing a true like board game, like an actual, like with the board and tracks and tokens and components that I can play by myself, right? And I've got none other than Dave Turtsey, who at the time I didn't really realize. I just saw his name on a lot of things I was looking at because he did solo modes for Teotihuacan. That was a game at the time I looked into and eventually got. I got this game along with Origins First Builders, which I ultimately don't have anymore. But he did the solo mode for that game. Obviously, I saw his name on the boxes for Imperium Classics and Legends. So to me, I'm like, all right, I like this guy's solo mindset. And then, as I learned throughout the time, he really tries to make the solo opponent feel like a true opponent, which you can tell through Teotihuacan and all the other things, and Anachrony and all that other stuff. And so this was the first time I was like, oh, like you can play like an actual board game, like not a card game, which, I mean, I guess the other stuff isn't, but like a heavy Euro game by yourself. I'm like, okay. So, and these all happen, of course, this all happens in a few months. So this isn't, but this made me like, okay, I love Euros. and I love and I know like they can be done in a very fun setting that you can play by yourself. And so that's ultimately leads me to like loving all the Garfield stuff and Shem Phillips, his design, and obviously Dave Turtsy stuff. But then like you've got like David Digby as a designer. So when he has his name on Eurogames, I just know that like these Eurogames can have and will have that love of a solo of solo built into them so to make it enjoyable as a solo player. So I would say these 5 games are going to be the 5 games that really define my love and like my likes and dislikes and things like that for my place right now in modern board gaming. And these are things that I look back on because, I think we all go through that phase. You get into it, you buy everything you possibly see because you look at everything and then you realize I don't like half of this stuff because you don't know what you like until you do it. And so these are things that I look back on and these are things that to this day I reflect on and like these are the things that I know will inform my taste or when I see a game and it has something that relates to this or has something that I know I don't like, I'm going to just say, all right, I can either pass on or like I'm going to look into it farther. So those are the 5 I would say define me as of right now. So I'd like to know from you guys, what are the games that you would say helped inform your board gaming taste or how you choose games or how you look into games. This was definitely early on in my board game life cycle. In my board game infancy, these really made the biggest impression on me, in mostly positive but slightly negative way. So yeah, so I'd really like to know what you guys think of that. And with all that being said, thank you guys so much again for all the support. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.